financial disagreements are a significant predicator to divorce. So you may have been in these situations already, and you may have developed, a trauma or trauma response to anything that's coming around the area of money.
Oftentimes, the maladaptive behavior that comes with that is that you want to hold on to it, and I'm reminded in Matthew 6:24, it says, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other." And I think this is such a great verse that is just a reminder to ensure that money is not the priority.
Your blended family has a 100% chance of success when you do it God's way. We're Blended Kingdom Families, and we want to provide biblical resources to heal and restore families with a message of hope for the next generation.
Hey guys, welcome back to the BKF podcast. We are super pumped to be with you today as we bring a kind of an interesting, sometimes sensitive topic.
Yes.
But today we're going to be talking about
finances. Money, money, money.
About the money, money. There's a song.
Money.
There's a song.
I'm singing it.
It's all about the money,
Money, money. Don't care about
anyway.
money. Okay.
Anyway, guys, we're going to be talking about finances, and specifically as it relates to blended family situations that can be very complicated. And we were talking kind of pre-show notes and just kind of walking through things, and there's not a lot of super clear answers. Every situation is a little bit different. So we're going to kind of approach this from best case scenario, maybe best situation, but also some drawbacks and some fallbacks to how you make those decisions.
Well, and I think also what the Bible says about that as well. And when you get married and you become one with your spouse, one in your finances, one in your all the different areas of a life, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, and financial is a part of that as well.
Yeah. Let's look at some stats first, and then we're going to go into some specifics. So the National Endowment of Financial Education found that 28% of married couples actually do keep separate accounts, while only 72 use joint accounts. So financial infidelity is very real. A 2020 survey by creditcards.com found that 15% of individuals keep financial secrets from their spouse.
That's not good.
And then a study from the University of Denver found that financial disagreements are a significant predictor of divorce. Couples who fight about money are more likely to experience marital dissatisfaction. And I'm sure if you're listening to this and we said, hey, we're talking about financial issues, and all of a sudden your spine starts tingling, you may have been in this kind of trauma before and experienced this level of dissatisfaction when it comes to finances in your marriage.
Sure. And, I think today we just want to bring an awareness of, how can we as a couple, and as it relates to our blended family, one, be on the same page, have full transparency, and do this in a God-honoring way, right?
Yeah.
And so joint versus separate accounts. What does joint finances mean? And so typically this is when both spouses pull their income into a single account or set of accounts.
Yeah. And all household expenses, earnings, and investments are shared.
Yes.
Okay?
Big word, shared.
Shared. So they list a few pros and cons. Pros is it's very unifying, transparency, and easier to manage household budgets. Some of the cons are, again, less autonomy, risk of resentment of unequal spending habits.
Yeah.
So, again, we understand the complexities of having rational conversations around this. If you separate your finances, it means you're having separate accounts, and they divide responsibilities based upon an agreed upon system. The pros of that is you do have a little bit more financial independence and less conflict over spending, and very clear boundaries. The cons are it lacks financial unity.
Yeah.
And possible tension over contribution levels and confusions in cases of emergencies. Again, blended families bring complexities.
Yeah.
So we're gonna approach this from an area of simplification. One, regardless of what you've brought in, I want to be really clear. You mentioned this, what the Bible talks about in terms of unity in marriage. When you're married, you're one. All right? Doesn't matter where you came from. Doesn't matter what's going on, you're one. And that's not just one in terms of financial, but it's also one in terms of how we decide financially
Yeah.
and make those financial decisions.
Yeah, and I think at the core of it, financial decisions should be made together. They should be made prayerfully, including the Holy Spirit in your in the decisions that you're making, that you're seeking God in these decisions, and that there's unity around that. And how is this going to positively impact your family? Are there going to be any negative implications? And are you budgeting correctly? Do we have access to all of these accounts? And so these are things that, if you're beginning to blend, you want to be having these conversations. If you've been blended and you're really struggling with this, you guys, you can start today. Have these conversations. We always suggest getting advice with a financial planner, and specifically somebody who works with blended families. We know a lot of times that, spousal support or child support can be a big point of contention in blended families. So having conversations about your finances, having these budgets, having the access to that together and doing it together is something that is going to better help you along the way and set you up for success in the process.
Yeah. Intimacy financially can often be described as, hey, would you mind if we just looked at your credit report? That's sometimes a very sensitive question to ask.
Like, who's going to ask that when they're dating?
I think you should ask it on your first date. What's your credit score? Could you bring a copy of your report? Because
it would tell you a lot. It really would.
It really would.
It really would.
It's honestly frightening how much a credit report actually tells you about your level of ability to manage not only yourself, but your finances.
Sure.
But one of the things in working with couples that struggle in this area, I tell them, if accountability is a struggle, then create an opportunity where accountability is front and center.
Yeah.
So it is about, whether it's biannually or at least once a year, setting a designated time and saying, hey, we're going to pull a copy of our credit reports. We're going to go through that line by line. Not only does it protect against areas where fraud may have happened, but it also is a level of saying, hey, here's how we've managed our finances, at least from a credit perspective, and how we're doing. Because again, you're coming in a blended family, you may not have discussed or even disclosed everything that's a part of that.
Sure.
And again, you talked about spousal and child support and how that is affecting, or if there's any resentments that are going on, or has our financial situation changed. Going over your credit report is just a good way of saying, hey, where are we at? Where are our markers? How are we doing? Do you have any questions? And have I upheld my financial responsibility to our family?
Well, and we talk a lot about marriage meetings and business meetings, right? Like doing that on a weekly basis to connect with your spouse, to understand, what are your goals in marriage? What are your goals for your blended family? Talk about your family schedule. But you guys, we also need to be implementing budget meetings as well. And this can be once a month. For our businesses, we pull a P&L every month to see what is the profit and loss, what's coming in and what's going out. And you can do the same thing for your finances at home. Say, hey, how much did we spend on fast food or eating out this month? How much did we spend on the kids' sports? Is our tithing in the right place according to our what our income is? Do we need to adjust? Things like that. And so setting a financial meeting every month where you and your spouse can sit down, you can go through, like, is our budget, are we spending over our budget? Are we spending under? Creating a goal for your finances. Like, are you wanting to save? How much? What does that look like? And so I think as we plan for these marriage meetings, in that, schedule a budget meeting. And if it's not every month, maybe it's every quarter. But like Scott said, you need to be having these on somewhat of a regular basis. One, we want to be great stewards of our finances. The Bible talks a lot about that and just being good stewards. And so we want to steward our finances well. We want it to be honoring God, and that we're not just spending to spend, and is what we're spending on the things that the Lord wants us to spend things on. I mean, truly being honest, is what we're doing. Do I need to take, 5 trips to Target in a month? Probably not. Did I need to buy those things? No. But again, this is where whenever you can set aside that time, go through your expenses, what the budget is, compare that to your goals. Is it in alignment? It sets us up for success, and it's a healthy way to be transparent and be honest with your finances.
Yeah. You mentioned something, and I want to just kind of bridge this into a different area of the finances side. You mentioned talking with a financial planner, somebody who's doing maybe estate planning, or who's helping you kind of navigate what life is going to look like when you're not here. We don't like to think about this, but the truth be told is there's going to be a time when we are not here. We are not on this earth. We are with Jesus, and our finances are something that get
messy.
Can get really messy, because you've got maybe you have children with somebody else. You've got children together. They have children with somebody else. And so this idea of like division of assets, and how do we do this, and should we include them or should we not include them, or there's so much complexities there. And again, where I want you to go with this is not necessarily having a conversation that you're not prepared to have because you don't know the options that are available to you. Because when you talk about trust, and when you talk about stipulations of trust, these are very technical things that financial planners generally have a pretty good idea of saying, hey, we can structure it like XYZ, and they are able to ask each of you questions about what's important to you, what's not important to you. Where I'm going with all this is, if there are complexities, what I don't want is for you guys just to go in willy-nilly and go, let's just talk about this. What do you think? What do I think? Versus going to somebody and say, here's our situation. These are the complexities. We'd like to be able to design something that is in agreement with both of us and have it on paper. And so that in the case that if something happens that is sudden, there's not a question after the fact. The last thing you want is for your kids to be dealing with probate court and things like that. Because if you don't have a will, your estate goes into probate. Or they have this crazy thing called the death tax. That's a very real thing that the government takes a huge chunk of your estate if you haven't planned. So again, these are not fun topics to talk about as a married couple, but they're very needed, because you're not going to be young and healthy forever. And so are you taking the responsibility to have those conversations?
No, I think that's good. And I think what we've talked about today are kind of two different things. Like, you have your budgeting and financial intimacy on a regular basis, right? Like, what do our bank accounts look like? Do we have joint bank accounts together? Do we have full transparency, passwords? Do we know what is going on with our finances? And we talk about, one person may be better at finances than the other person, but both need to have an active part in it so that you both are understanding and stewarding what God has given you well. And then you also have the part of, like you were just talking about, Scott, the wills and the estates, and if there's trusts and things like that. And that's where getting with a financial planner is I think it's imperative. My mom and I come from a blended family. We were talking about this the other day when my mom was here visiting. Because I have an older stepsister from my stepdad. And so, what does that look like for us if mom or dad were to go be with Jesus, and we were just talking through that stuff. And I'm thankful that they've already taken the steps to align that out. And I know where to go if something happens to them. And so, guys, we are not the experts in this. There are people out there who specialize in blended family finances. A great couple, Tim and Alexis, they've been on our podcast before, Blend Wealth. They specialize in this stuff, especially, what you were talking about, Scott, with financial planning and stuff. So y'all check them out. But you can also go to any local places and ask, let them know, hey, we're a blended family and we are needing guidance in this area of our marriage.
I want to touch one last thing before we kind of conclude. There is such thing as financial trauma too. And so as you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, okay, I want to have this conversation, but I kind of go back to the statistic that we had talked about where there's financial disagreements are a significant predicator to divorce. So you may have been in these situations already, and you may have developed a trauma or trauma response to anything that's coming around the area of money.
Yeah.
Maybe you were married to somebody who, didn't manage finances very well. Maybe you come from a family that operated financially very differently. So the precursors to how you're going about talking about this are very important to have some intimate conversations around, hey, what are your views on finances? What is your view on money? How do you, tell me any stories that I need to be aware of that would tell me how you're going to react to certain situations.
Yeah.
I think those are really good vulnerable conversations to have just as you prepare to have good financial meetings.
Yeah, I think where we see a lot of issues with finances and blended families is like you said, is they came from a previous marriage where there was frivolous spending and they were living paycheck by paycheck, and there's kind of like a financial trauma, so to speak, of what you were saying. And then oftentimes the maladaptive behavior that comes with that is that you want to hold on to it, And I'm reminded in Matthew 6:24, it says, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other." And I think this is such a great verse that is just a reminder to ensure that money is not the priority, right? It's it doesn't take priority over our relationship and our marriage, and we don't want that to cause division. And if it is, you guys, that's where you need to seek outside help and support so that you can, talk through this. But when couples view money as a tool to serve God and each other, that's where it can create a foundation of unity. So understand that if you come in with some financial baggage or trauma, that take this as a good opportunity and just a reminder to sit down, talk through that, get some financial support and outside help if you need it. That way that you guys can get on a good foundation.
Yeah, I love that. Guys, this was an interesting podcast all about the money. So hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that it's spurring conversations in your family and in your marriage. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We cannot wait to see you again. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yes, be blessed in all that you do.
Hey friends, so glad you were here with us today, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can find more resources from Blended Kingdom Families at blendedkingdomfamilies.com. Join us again next time as we talk about more blended family topics. Be blessed in all that you do, and remember, nothing will be impossible with God.